So, as we know, some of the strategic dilemmas we're already talking about, which is essentially, do you have this more corporate style or this slightly mad style? This is the art college in Toronto. Or blandness, do we encourage, do we think success represents the fact that you have the 32,547th McDonald's here? And I did hear that this was one of the few places where McDonald's apparently had to close down for a decade, which you should get an award for. I mean, a second award. I mean, you just got one award. I give you now a second award for the day. No, I'm only joking. And one of the issues within that, and given that I spoke about generosity earlier, is, of course, if we're looking at the isolated project that profit maximizes on its own, can that, in a sense, on its own, make a great city? And I think everybody knows, and being in a Swedish Nordic culture, you obviously have that greater sense of the public. It's obviously about bending the market to bigger picture possibilities in some way. And this is just, you probably know this is in Amsterdam, but these buildings here, you don't know which ones of those are social housing. And that's obviously very good. And it's all fitted into some sort of template and so on. So I just want to give you some words people use. I always ask people, give me some words, adjectives they use to describe places they love or like to live in. And one of the first words people use is lovable. But how many strategic plans of cities start with the word love? They usually start with, we are going to build the bypass on the E18 on the left. Now, what inspires you more, to read a page that opens that says that, or I want a lovable, livable, joyful city? Or the other words people use is the opposite, which is obviously dynamic and so on, and edgy. Now, the interesting point, and of course increasingly green, healthy, and so on, but the interesting point is, as you look at these words, easy, walkable, places, some are quite lively, like vital, like the word vital, edgy, vibrant, and others are the opposite, peaceful. And great places, of course, can do both things at the same time. They are calmly exciting, or whatever. You get the idea. And that is really the trick of the great city. And it's quite interesting, because these are words that I haven't said. These are words that people have told me over time. So obviously, the opposite of being reflective is perhaps discovery, trading, very active, can do entrepreneurial, and so on. So that's quite interesting to note. And of course the other thing is about memorable, iconic. And when I say iconic, I don't mean we have an iconic building necessarily. We could have lots of small things that together, a great street is iconic, when small things together make one big thing. So what you're seeing is there's always a sort of balance between wildness and order and so on. And of course dealing with the basic things about dirt, noise, and so on. But I suppose one of the words that came up yesterday continually is the capacity of Umeå to be adaptable. So adaptability and resilience is perhaps one of the key things the strategic people should be thinking about at the time. How resilient and adaptable is Umeå? Now, this is things that people don't like, and it's all predictable. They don't like, not surprisingly, dull, uninspiring, soulless places. However, if you did a dullness audit of Umeå, it would be quite good, one of you, to do that. To walk around, I mean, Jan Gale does versions of this, is to walk around Umeå and say, how dull is everything? You might not find very many, but it would be because normally we don't do things like dullness audits or buildings that say no. When you're walking down the street, which buildings are saying no to you and which ones are saying yes? It's a very simple. I mean, if you ask what's your methodology, my methodology is that a yes-no methodology, in which case we're all urban designers, because I think we all have an instinctive feeling about that. This is an interesting building. It was a healthcare building, but let's not worry about that. What we do know, though, is actually attractive buildings reduce hospital stays. You know about all that stuff and so on. This is that same hospital, that corridor. And here, I'm sorry to say, this is 9 o'clock in the morning. The ethics committee is in this brown corridor. How dare the ethics committee of the hospital be in a dark brown disgusting hot corridor? You know, when this place is about well-being and making people feel good. The other thing people don't like is over-engineered structures, and it's very interesting. I mean, I thought your proposal about building houses on there, I thought, wow, if Umeå actually did that, that would be an icon like of the type that hasn't happened for a long time. So, you know, you could build variations. We're back in Amsterdam of these sort of things. I mean, this looks completely crazy, yeah? But if you look at it like this, building 1 and 8, 2 and 7, 3 and 6, 5 and 4 are the same. So what looks like chaos looks unified. So all I'm saying is one can play tricks and use some sort of imagination on it. The other thing people don't like after a while is everything being the same. And if you added all the McDonald's together and put them together in a row, it would be a very interesting trip, perhaps a horror movie, I'm not sure. It would go from here nearly to Kiruna. Yeah? Now just imagine that journey. Actually, that should be a piece of art. Magnus, could you create that for us, please? That trip of 32,000 McDonald's or whatever else. And, you know, Coca-Cola is quite interesting, but it can be invasive. And anyway, that is one of the key messages people don't like. The other thing is traffic. You don't have any traffic, so you don't need to worry about that. You do have traffic, but not that much. When do the traffic jams start? Anyway, so traffic. So I don't need to say more about that because a lot of you go on bikes, etc., etc. And there are different forms, and I presume suddenly when your new railway comes in, it'll be some version of this. And I don't know where the station's going to be a bit further down. So those are some of the things people don't like. And what they do like is this thing about seamless connectivity, physically, virtually, and emotionally. So here, for example, we're talking about major transformations, and given that you are doing that, this is Cologne. This was a motorway. Let's just look at that again. That was a motorway. All of this was a motorway. I just think that's quite interesting. And there are lots of places that are doing that. Boston is doing it, Seoul's done it, and so on. Or here, let's look at this. This is Chicago, and this is the view from the mayor's window. And that's quite an interesting transformation. I think it's fantastic, and it's all very green, bicycle stuff underneath, and so on. So, obviously one of the things people want, we're back to what people like and dislike, is their own unique resources, the things that are specifically them in some sort of way. And obviously that's a bit like being clannish in some sort of sense. So here, for example, in Italy, where I think they're great at using what they call sagre and feste, which are basically occasions celebrating aspects of their city. So this is in a city near Naples, which is the Day of the Cooks. So every cook comes out and parades. In Belo Horizonte, there is the Day of the Garbage Collectors, who will celebrate being garbage collectors. And I think it's very good to think of all the unsung heroes as parades of unsung... Perhaps that's a 2014 idea. But anyway, you're getting the idea. What people want is distinctiveness and difference and so on. I don't know what your equivalent of this would be, but anyway, a moose reading the Financial Times, perhaps. But anyway, that you don't need to go there. But I think even places that are regarded as dull, like Dubai, which is in one level exciting and on the other level completely boring, this is the municipality of Dubai, and that looks okay. Actually, it changes all the time. So what people are really contrasting that is with the things that we see everywhere. And I think, and I thank God nobody's mentioned the word brand in Umeå, is so many cities are now talking about the word branding. How do we brand a place? I think it's much more important to say, how do I build a reputation? Building a reputation strategy is completely different from building a branding strategy, and we can talk about that later if you like.